Welcome to Straight Outta Savannah, where the magic happens. My guest Heather Cypel is here. Heather Cypel is a relationship specialist who works with women who've done all the work, therapy, inner healing, self-awareness practices, but still find themselves stuck in the same relationship patterns. You attract the same type of person. You lose yourself in relationships. You tolerate behavior you don't want. You understand why the patterns exist, but you can't seem to stop them. Heather's work focuses on the layer beneath the emotional and mental, the deeper blocks that keep patterns locked in place. Through her proprietary process, women experience shifts in who they attract, how they show up in relationships, and their capacity to hold boundaries without effort. If you're tired of temporary relief and ready for lasting transformation, Heather's approach might be the missing piece. Download her free energy transmission, and I will put all of these links in the show notes. So, Heather,
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on, Tammi.
I am super excited because the work that you do is very similar to the work that I do. And it's just so amazing. I can feel my energy just buzzing from yours, speaking to you, even off the camera. But I have a question for you. With women who've done all the inner work, but still repeat the same relationship patterns, what does reclaiming spiritual authority look like when the body and the subconscious are still running old programming?
I say that it looks like an incremental process. We look for the incremental result from the energy work that's being done. When you shift something inside, certainly your own operating system shifts, then the external world reflects that. But there is a lot to shift, especially for females, which is why I have a heart for this work for sure. Is that for centuries now, probably a couple of millennia, women have had kind of a rough go of it on
Yeah.
this earth experience. There's been a lot of difficulty and pain that has caused collective patterns and collective trauma response, these ways that all of the women that we grew up around had because of all of the women they grew up around. It's really unconscious what we're beaming out of our energy body. I say it's like a rock slide that came into our system with an avalanche on top of it. When we first start melting away the avalanche, we can get a great amount of results with the pain and suffering alleviating, the triggers going down. You really have to get to each rock and move it out of the way if you want a great shift. And we can do that work. It's not a magic wand kind of thing. And suddenly you have a completely different life experience. We know that the external world reflects what's going on inside of us. And if we want a lot of shift and a lot of growth, then we have to move a lot of rocks.
Yes. But do people want to do this work?
I do believe a lot of people do. There's such a large community of people looking for inner development progress. There's a large community of people tending towards things like plant medicine or women's circles or different paths and processes that they have learned about. I do find in each one of those places, there's a large gap in the process that they're doing versus what all can be done in order to have the results. I come in with a little bit of strategy in my process too. There's so many tools that we have in our tangible world to get things done. But when we go to do our inner work, we haven't learned as a society all that many tools. And that's one of my main objectives in energy work is I want to learn as many tools in our inner world as we have in our tangible world. If you think of keys and light switches and phone chargers and all the things you need in a kitchen to prepare a meal, that's a lot of tools. But we're going in our inner world, and a lot of people just are starting to realize about this. They come from their conscious mind and they're like, okay, how do I do this inner work? And we can learn things like tapping to feel better in the moment. We can learn things like inner child work to identify issues that happened when we were young that we're still hurting around. And there's different tools that we have, but relative to the amount of physical tools that we're accustomed to using, we don't have all that many inner world tools. And we know that when you have the right tool, the job is easier. If you don't have a good tool and you're trying to do something, then it's not going to come out just right, or it's going to take longer. And the analogy I use is if your objective is to paint a wall, but you have an eyelash curler, you're not saying you're not going to get paint on the wall. What I'm saying is it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to come out looking a bit different.
I love that analogy. I usually use the eating of the elephant. You know, you
One
can
bite at a
one
time.
bite. Yes. So what brought you into doing this work?
When I was little, I had a heart for God. I studied theology passionate when I was little. I had my first spiritual awakening when I was 4.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm that good. I had my head in the ethers. Studied history and theology and anthropology in college. I was always a pretty self-aware person. I remember sitting in an anthropology class where they taught how hard it is to change a belief, but it is so much easier to change a belief than it is to change a behavioral pattern. And I was like, the things that we believe, like the floor will hold our weight up and we're not going to fall, that's a belief. The sky is blue. There's a lot of beliefs that we have. It's easier to change that than a behavioral pattern. And that can become daunting and disappointing. And I guess I was always one of those people where I was like, I'm going to figure it out.
Yes, yes, a scientist at heart.
And so when I was little in church, Jesus said, you can do all of these things that I have done and more. And I was super excited. I thought church was a training ground. I want to learn all the things that Jesus did. And after a matter of years, I realized, wait a minute, we're not learning any of these things. And I was greatly disappointed. Years later, I started learning energy work and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I always clipped back to that passage where he said you could do all these things and more. And I'm like, wait a minute, even in energy work, we're not yet able to do all of these things and more. So I use that as a marker. No, I can get there. He said I can do this. I will. I'm going to figure it out. And I think through that process, it had incurred lots of pain and wounding on my system and had ended up with a lot of anxiety. So that was my point. I was like, I need to heal this so that I can feel better and navigate life easier. I'm always still thinking about that. You can do all these things and more.
People talk about what would Jesus do? And I feel like a lot of the people that talk about that really don't know what Jesus would do. Oh, because what Jesus would do is different from what they think Jesus would do, because Jesus was a disruptor. He comes to mess around with the status quo. I think that so many people that do religion don't know that. They realize that Jesus was love, but he also was turning over the tables.
And that's one of the things that I teach too, is the difference between the mundane and the sacred, the regular, average, everyday life things and the sacred. And I do think the turning over the tables and coming in with a whip was like, look, this is a sacred space and that's not allowed here. I think for women who have been on a spiritual journey after the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, women have our different experience. Freedom and autonomy was a big key factor in those previous decades. And now I feel like it comes back to saying, what is sacred? We each have to choose for ourselves what that looks like.
And in your work, you encourage the ladies to do that
and to figure it out. What is their definition of sacred when it comes to respect? What is their definition of sacred when it comes to honor? What is their definition of sacred when it comes to him picking his soccer? Yes. The third, so many places, they might be like, no, that's fine. my space, my energy body is here, but his is here too. And he doesn't delineate that as sacred, right? Where are those nuances of where you will choose to stand? Some people say that it's a pick your battle kind of situation. And I say that it's more about what you can hold in your energy body to be true. There is a conversation about consideration and what different people want when they're living in the same space. And I do think that if something doesn't really bother you, it's probably not your piece to make a big deal about. Well, when you hold yourself as sacred, then I do believe that the external does orient to that naturally. You don't have to articulate it. You don't have to get upset. It's just that the behavioral pattern adjusts.
Yes, that leads me into this next question. Many women in midlife realize that they've spent years losing themselves to relationships. We help them shift from self-abandonment to self-possession, and not just mentally, but energetically.
Definitely. We look at the pieces where their system is letting go and why. So I do a lot of conversations around operating systems, and I teach a lot about that. I'll be having a class coming out soon on the different energy body archetypes, and that'll explain a lot. A lot of people will have these big epiphany. It's like having a manual for a person. Whenever my child was growing up, I would have appreciated that. And so sometimes it's just an operating system difference, and you can clearly see it's their soul lesson. This is where they need to grow and get stronger. Sometimes it's just a patterning. They can realize there was another way. So we start by finding out via worksheet. What is upsetting you? Where are you giving yourself away and not realizing, oh, this could have been different all along? And the needs that we have, right? We comprehend our basic needs, a roof over our head, food. And then there's a lot of other things too, right? Some people have a hard line. I need a vehicle. And some people are like, I don't really need a vehicle, right? So people have different needs. But I like to get into the core of what you need. Do you need positive feedback? Are you the type of person that needs to hear someone saying, you did this well, I liked it this way, or you bring joy to my life? Do you need more attention, someone's actual presence while they're on their phone a lot, right? Like looking at your core need. I don't think a lot of women have had much training on what their core needs are. So we delve into that a lot. If they're not consciously aware that they need positive feedback, they're going to be running on a depleted system, which means that their system will allow behaviors from others that don't give a positive feedback, right? So, first of all, we get deep into what their system is oriented as. How is this operating system designed? Then we look at what needs are not getting met. Then I do what we call dismantling the junk programs that are standard low. Right. We just get those out of the way, and then that standard can naturally raise. Then your energy body is saying the same thing your mouth is saying, right? The number one thing I hear from men is, what does she want? Because we don't realize, because we didn't grow up understanding energetic. We don't realize that our system is sending out 75% of the messaging, and our mouth and our mind is only sending out 25. But when that's conflicting, because we don't know what our energy body is saying, and a man is standing there, his job energetically, his energy body is designed to read a woman's energy body. And a lot of women can say, but I told him to do this and this, but your energy body was saying something totally different. And then we blame the man for being whatever word you want to fill in the blank there with it.
I just like to say Mars and Venus.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because one thing I've learned after, I guess now 30 years of marriage,
Yeah.
20 with someone who didn't know how to love me. And what I learned was that there were so many programs and so many conditions that I placed on myself, and so many programs that were running.
Definitely.
In order to heal, I had to take the time and I had to do the work.
Yeah.
When I don't think I did a relationship for the first year after we split up. Didn't
Yeah.
take time for me.
Yeah.
I recommend that to women. I say, take time.
Yeah.
Don't
Absolutely.
just jump into from one relationship to another relationship, and then you end up having all these situationships. And I know that you run into things just like that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see that more so with the younger generation too. I think it's getting worse because you're energetically connected to them. And even if you break up, you're still energetically connected to them. If your heart is still hurting, if you're thinking about them, if you're angry with them, these are indicators of an energetic connection.
In my experience, my ex-husband passed away about a month ago. We were divorced since 2009, but we were together for 20 years. I still felt this level of grief, even though
Abs-
I had forgiven him and he came to me in spirit for forgiveness again. And so I get that. But I was not prepared for that level of grief that I experienced. It happened and I had to talk it through with my current husband. He was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good," because it was time because he had been sick for about a decade. I think about 10 years he'd been sick. And he was only 56 when he died. Yeah, well, it's actually right before his birthday. But it was such a surprise to me. It took me really because I was like, I'm happy for him that he transitioned. He actually came to me even after. So I was like, all right. And I said, well, I'm just glad that you're able to go. When his brother says, I hope that he finds the peace that he didn't find here.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. I said, I believe that he will.
Yeah.
But you just don't, because I wouldn't think that there was still that type of connection between us. Because, like I said, I am a person that forgives instantly. I'm not a person that holds on to unforgiveness, bitterness. It's got to go. I didn't even realize why I was like that. I've been like that all my life. I don't just hold on to things.
And that's not common.
They're like, you forgave him because he died. He had AIDS for 26 years.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what killed him. He'd had a couple of strokes before he got sick. He was driving trucks. He would call me 2 or 3 times a month. And I think that he knew something was going to happen to him because he was intuitive as well. And also, he was so guilty. He would call and just apologize. I said, listen, we already done this. I told you I already forgave you.
So he means to forgive himself, which still has not quite yet happened, but that can happen in the life review process for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I didn't recognize. And I feel like if you were to work with someone that was in that space, what would you tell her?
I would say let's look for any energetic connections that may still be there. And because most of these energetic connections, we wouldn't really know how to find. They're buried underneath layers of other pieces, right? And I would say loss is a when we lose a connection, that can be a pain. That's something to grieve. But there's a difference between, oh, my heart loved this person and we were connected, and I'm going to miss being able to talk to them. And things that feel tangled up and your grief is not productive. If your grief is stuck, that's where we were. Grieving can look like so many different things. You could be crying while you're smiling at the same time, right? It's complex. You could be angry and not know why. And it's just the emotions that we go through. But if it's lasting longer, or if it's making you non-functional,
Then there's a product.
then progress that we can have around that. But as far as whether or not you had more energetic connection rather than just, I guess you would say, friendship, right? Like a heart caring experience for them. I would say that we have so many parts of our energy body that is dormant or the lights are turned off. And this is natural. If most people could see how little of their energy body was turned on, I think a lot of people, especially advanced practitioners, would be horrified. The thing is that the more of our energy body we get turned on, the more that we're self actualized, which is what Jesus was, right? It's like you can do all of these things and it's completely natural. You have a completely higher perspective on everything and how everything works. So the less of our energy body that we have turned on, the more we're trying. And because those places are dormant, we have default processes running in those parts of our energy body. Those default processes are survival mode.
Yeah.
So we have lots of ways that we are codependent. Codependent is not one thing. It's think of more like a cactus. There's lots of little lines coming out all over the place. And it does not look just like one thing. It's like each line of the cactus would be a different thing in life. It would represent a different way that we're doing something. Because we still live in a world where we need others and we need connection, and the world can still be harsh. Our needs don't just suddenly happen and self actualize in front of us. There's reason. It's, oh no, if this person doesn't want to do this, then what am I going to do? Or these little manipulation tactics that we don't know because we don't know, our heart doesn't know how to procure its need, getting someone to have their full attention when they're in our presence or whatever. And so in past relationships, we can have these little lines that are still going out. Say, for example, they didn't pay as much attention while y'all were in the relationship. There can still be an energy line that wants them to pay attention, even though you're not in relationship with them anymore. There could be these little things that were unresolved. And until you get to them and put your finger on it and start working it, they're still there. Don't worry about the majority of them. But the ones that are causing you a lot of pain, the ones that are making you frustrated, the ones that make your heart have a longing is like pain. It's supposed to be like, oh, my need gets met and then it doesn't hurt anymore, right? But longing can stay for years, if not decades. I've definitely experienced personally what it feels like to be lonely in the same room with someone. That is a very unpleasant experience. And that's an energetic tour. It's like an unbalanced seesaw, right? Their system's not paying attention. So then your system suddenly starts craving it, right? So it creates longing and it forces that energetic into your system. And I've experienced that before. That's miserable. I'm like, I want to get away from people like that so very quickly. In order for me to do that in a healthy way, I need to go and look at what line is coming out of my system that's connecting with someone that won't do the very things that I need, right? It's not about them. It's about my own energy body and what processes are operational there.
That sounds just like the Matrix.
Kind of.
You remember, and then they hook them in the bag in order for them to go into the cell. I'm like, that sounds really like the Matrix. You can tell it's one of my favorites. I'm loving this journey. I have one question that I ask all of my guests. If there was anything in the world that you could change, what would that be and why?
I feel like it will eventually happen. But if I could see this happening in the world right now, it would be this type of training so that women and children could learn how to work in their energy body and navigate their system better and more competently. We just absolutely know what's happening. And then we would be able to have dynamic relationships. It would be complex. There would be a drama still because we love drama.
Watch it on TV.
We'd be able to get through things faster and we would be able to experience more in our lives. This life is so amazing. The highs, the lows, the ebbs, the flows. It's so beautiful. I look back and I think of how each moment in life, we go through phases. Each phase felt so different. Thinking back to when you were a teenager and what it felt like, and then when you were in your 20s and how that felt so different. I think it's beautiful. I do believe that we don't actually have to endure as much suffering as we do right now.
I agree 100%. And that is an answer that I haven't gotten. It's very similar to one young lady said that she wished that when babies were born, they could get a welcome to Earth book.
Oh,
This book it had their human design because she was a human design, their natal chart. And it had tips and tools on how to raise them and different things like that. And I thought it would be so cool.
I felt the same way when I learned about the energy body archetypes. I was like, oh my God, I would have done at least 3 things differently when raising my daughter.
I try really hard not to go there because oh my gosh, because I was even a person that I apologized to my kids. Stuff. I was like, you know what? This is what I did. And I thought it was a good thing. But I think that just actually understanding that would help parents because sometimes I knew that I had one kid that I needed to keep him busy because I knew if I didn't keep him busy, he would just get in stuff. So I knew that. And so I did it. He was in sports and whatever he wanted to do, we did it. We did every sport and soccer he did for 6 or 7 years. And then he grew up and decided he wanted to act. So we did that too. Always dropping and picking, going to get the stuff from Goodwill so they can make the costumes. That's what they did. They're like, oh, we need you to get this and this. And so you go to Goodwill or Salvation Army or somewhere and you find them. And then somebody did the stitching. So we did.
My daughter was an extrovert, so I chose to socialize her. She needed more than a home with just me and her in it, but there was no one else that was going to be allowed in my home. So we went out and we visited and we went out into restaurants and we went to festivals and different events that got her connected with lots of other people. I'm an introvert, so I did not need that kind of experience, but it gets it up making life a lot fuller and a lot more beautiful.
Yeah. And the thing is, for me, I'm an introvert who has taught herself to extrovert when necessary. I can do that, but it's not my preference.
Totally.
This kid, extrovert, the good thing was I used to threaten him to homeschool him, and that would get him to straighten up because he didn't want
Yeah.
to. What happens? My friends. And I'm like, you gonna have to get this stuff together.
Yep.
I'm gonna pull you out and homeschool you now. Was I gonna ever homeschool him? No. I don't like doing that. I'm not gonna do it, but I would threaten. And it worked. Oh my God. So let the people know if there's any last words that you have, and if you have anything that you want to share. All of her details will be in the show notes. So she'll have clickable links in there.
Yes, the free little offer that I have is extremely potent. It is very powerful. And I've heard lots of people messaging not too long after starting to listen to it with some really great feedback from it and what they've noticed and experienced in their life. It's an audio transmission, some energy that I send to defrost the energy body, which allows to melt away suffering and pain and triggers and give you your own energy back because that frozen energy, very heavy. And we carry that around with us everywhere we go. And we can get a little grumpy here and there. We don't know where it's coming from, but it's there. I put it on repeat and I listen to it overnight. You don't have to listen to it with the audio on because it's an energy transmission. So just let it play and let some really great energetics happen in your system. Stay tuned for when I put out the energy body archetypes class. That can clean up some relationships, whether that's romantic relationships or parent-child relationships. You can get some things cleaned up just by comprehending the operating system that's happening in that other person and that they're not actually doing it this particular way. They're doing it because they need this or understanding what they need, and you can motivate them correctly. Can create harmony in relationships just from that.
That's powerful. That is so powerful. And thank you so much for being here. And thank you also for providing that because I'm going to actually do that as well.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been such an amazing conversation. I was just telling the guy that I interviewed right before you, he's a grief counselor.
Yeah.
And that was an amazing interview as well. We were actually talking about some of the same things, which I know my spirit is like, how we're gonna saying the same stuff. When his daughter, 15 years old, passed away, and then on that journey.
Yeah.
So it was just powerful. And I feel like this was as well. So I am just super excited. I was telling him how amazing people have been on my show since I started recording this year. And he said, and I used to think, gosh, what do I need to do? But then you know what I realized? Once I put myself in that frequency where I am ever expanding, then I get to interview great people like you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been my heart's intention too to connect with wonderful, loving people who want to move forward, who takes the steps to move forward. And then I get to meet your
I love it. So this has been Straight Outta Savannah. So make sure that you like, share, subscribe, and download wherever you are listening or watching this. It will air, I think, in probably about the end of July. I think your show will air, and I'm super excited for it. So thank you for joining us on Straight Outta Savannah.